to watch you play. Okay, I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring your ass.
Hey,
Bring your ass.
can you send me a list of good restaurants? We're gonna be there for like 5 days. I want you to send me a list of some good restaurants, okay?
Yeah, I'm gonna find your number through somebody. I'm gonna send them to you.
I appreciate it, my brother. Congratulations. I'll see you Wednesday.
Appreciate it, baby.
Well, if you want his number, it's 55. No.
Hey.
I don't think it's a bold take at all whatsoever. The Minnesota Timberwolves and Denver Nuggets Western Conference semifinal series was probably the best series in the playoffs so far. And that's not to say that this was an underwhelming playoffs at all whatsoever. There's just a lot at stake for both of these teams. And it culminated in a Game 7, and who doesn't love a Game 7? So before we get to the content, we are on the grind to 1 million subscribers. We're about 83,000 subscribers away. So if you want to contribute to that goal, check if you're subscribed. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I don't know if it's the fact that I'm a Los Angeles Laker fan and I just want someone to destroy the Denver Nuggets, or it's the fact that I find the star that Anthony Edwards is becoming to be so refreshing. I remember coming out of the NBA draft, people were wondering if Anthony Edwards still loved basketball. But I think after realizing his latest ascent, we could definitely agree that this man could potentially one day be the future face of the NBA. And you began to see some of that determination towards the end of March when he said that he just wants to win.
You guys are now #1 in the West. Does that mean anything to you right now? Do you want that #1 seed or?
I mean, I just want to win, so if that's what comes with it, then that's cool.
The Minnesota Timberwolves have been a laughingstock of the NBA since the Kevin Garnett era. Many people thought that they wasted Kevin Love's prime. And even once they were able to get a historic haul for Kevin Love, they still weren't able to build a contender. So when Anthony Edwards got drafted #1 overall to the Minnesota Timberwolves, people thought it would just be more of the same. Just 3 seasons into his career, he's talking trash to Kevin Durant in the very first round of the NBA playoffs. Now, bear in mind, going into this season, people thought the Phoenix Suns were an absolute super team, but the Minnesota Timberwolves were able to sweep them with ease. And it included a signature moment where Anthony Edwards even said this to Kevin Durant. But once Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves were able to sweep the Phoenix Suns, even then he demonstrated remarkable leadership skills for a man that was his age. Anthony Edwards is currently 22 years old. The man hasn't even scratched the surface of his prime. And this was further exemplified when he straight up told his 8-year veteran teammate, a former #1 overall pick in his own right, and an all-star, Karl Anthony Towns, to stop fouling. I mean, who's the alpha in this interview? You tell me.
Probably because I was trying to play more defense.
I mean, just stop fouling.
Yeah.
In the first half.
But throughout this entire playoffs, you would see iconic interviews, such as when Anthony Edwards said he just wants to kill everything in front of him.
I just want to kill everything in front of me, man. That's the main thing. Pretty much. That's all it is to it.
And when the Minnesota Timberwolves took a 2-0 lead against the Denver Nuggets, stealing the first 2 road games against the Nuggets before the Nuggets came back up 3-2, people were counting out the Minnesota Timberwolves, saying that they don't believe they could win. People were saying that Rudy Gobert can't stop Nikola Jokic. But right at the conclusion of a Game 6 blowout of the Denver Nuggets, pushing it to Game 7, Anthony Edwards dropped another iconic interview when he said this.
Yeah, I told him. I said, I'll see y'all motherfuckers for Game 7. Yeah.
Now, throughout this playoff series, I don't think there were bigger winners than the Minnesota Timberwolves. I mean, Anthony Edwards was getting compared to the likes of Michael Jordan, and I have to admit, a lot of their game is very similar. Michael Jordan himself said that there are similarities to their game, and the fact that you're able to take the defending NBA champions, who by the way won the NBA championship with ease last year, one of the deepest teams in the NBA, and you were able to take this team to 7 games, that in of itself is a victory. The thing I absolutely absolutely appreciate about basketball the most is how sometimes statistics just don't really make much sense. In this case, one would assume that whenever a 4-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year is guarding the defending MVP, it'll slow him down somewhat considerably. In this case, that wasn't really the case. Historically, Nikola Jokic has always dominated Rudy Gobert. So Chris Finch decided to make a very crucial adjustment in Game 6, putting Karl Anthony Towns on Nikola Jokic. Which, by the way, is probably why I love playoff basketball so much, because these teams play against each other so many times and you have to consistently adjust from game to game. And if you're able to successfully adjust, then you might be able to get a victory against a more talented team. And if you're not, then, well, you might end up firing your head coach. This is typically why, despite winning Coach of the Year, your job isn't ever safe in the NBA. This is why the Lakers fired Darvin Ham. This is why the Milwaukee Bucks fired Coach Mike Budenholzer 1 year ago and then decided to fire Adrian Griffin this past year. And in this case, this one adjustment was so effective that Nikola Jokic was held to 13.3% from 3 and 40.9% from the field. For some reason, there was this narrative surrounding Karl Anthony Towns that he's a terrible defender, but if you take a look at his statistics, even before Chris Finch started coaching him, he was always a solid defender. It was just the rest of the Minnesota Timberwolves pieces weren't there. And of course, Chris Finch obviously placed a heavier emphasis on the defensive side of the ball. The big problem from Cat was actually offensively. In the first game of the series, Cat dropped 20 points off of 8 of 13 from the field. In the second game of the series, Cat dropped 27 points off of 10 of 15 from the field. And then the Denver Nuggets were able to hold him down a little bit. In game 3, he only dropped 14 off of a very efficient 4 of 7. In game 4, he had his worst game to date, 5 of 18 from the field for 13 points. And probably the biggest problem that he's had throughout the series was foul trouble. Ergo, why Anthony Edwards said that he needs to stop fouling. And funny enough, Karl Anthony Towns would once again find himself in foul trouble for Game 7. And how could he not be? The entire game plan for the Minnesota Timberwolves was centered around Karl Anthony Towns guarding Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic couldn't be stopped. You could only hope to slow him down or to contain him. And fortunately, that's what Cat would do. But to give Karl Anthony Towns all the credit for the defense that was played on the Denver Nuggets would be a huge disservice to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And to say that the Denver Nuggets choked would also be a huge disservice to the Denver Nuggets. I felt like this was two masterful tacticians as head coaches going up against each other in an incredible chess match with one another. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the best defensive team in the NBA this year, and that showed. It showed every time Nikola Jokic tried to get one of his signature putbacks. It showed every single time that Michael Porter Jr. had a look at a 3, and it showed right when Jamal Murray was trying to regain his rhythm in the second half. Jamal Murray had 24 points in the first half of this game, and he was significantly limited in the second half of this game. All of these things aren't accidents. In basketball, you don't just magically choke away games, especially if you're playing very well in the first half. Adjustments are made, teams are locking in, and it's what makes playoff basketball so special. And I think the Minnesota Timberwolves get a lot of credit for that. Okay, except here, Michael Porter Jr., what are you doing? What's with the lack of effort? How are you going to let Naz Reid just body you up and get an offensive rebound here? That aside, I'm excited that the Timberwolves made it to the Western Conference Finals. I'm hyped for the matchup between Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks versus the Minnesota Timberwolves to go to the NBA Finals. We have videos coming out on the New York Knicks, the Indiana Pacers that will be coming to you guys tomorrow. The playoffs are just getting better and better, so make sure you're subscribed and have our notifications if you want more quick recaps like this. And aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.